In this episode, we speak with Phil Dunne, UK Managing Director at Stax, where he leads the firm's business across the UK and EMEA. Phil brings more than 25 years of experience spanning industry and consulting, with a focus on supporting private equity clients through commercial due diligence, value creation, and exit planning. Before joining Stax, he served as UK Managing Partner at Roland Berger, partner at EY leading the EY-Parthenon Strategy team, and UK Managing Partner and leader of the private equity practice at Kearney. Phil was recognized by the Consulting Report as one of the top private equity consultants and leaders of both 2024 and 2025. Stax is a global consulting firm that supports corporate and private equity clients across industries such as the technology, healthcare, education, and consumer sectors. The firm delivers data-driven insights to help clients accelerate growth, boost profitability, and make smarter investment decisions. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow.
RJ Lumba is the Executive Chairman of Market Insight Media and Managing Partner of GrowthCap. He is the host of Top Consultant, a podcast featuring today's best consultants who advise and provide services to corporations, governments, nonprofits, and other organizations. Executives and key decision makers tune in to Top Consultant to identify the most knowledgeable and experienced consultants for their most important projects.
Phil, great to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolute pleasure. Nice to meet you.
I was jotting down some notes on things that we would talk about, and I have in my notes here animals, rugby, and private equity. And we'll go in reverse order. Actually, we'll go even more macro. The merger. So Grant Thornton and Stax. I mean, as I was thinking about it, I was trying to think about how Stax fits within Grant Thornton, which is a very large firm. So can you give us a little bit of context as to, the size of Stax, what it has been known for in the market, and then how it fits within the larger Grant Thornton organization?
Yeah, sure. So Stax is about $100 million. It's primarily a US business. Headquartered in Boston, offices in New York, Chicago. We also have a Colombo office in Sri Lanka that provides some of our back office analytics, secondary research capabilities, that sort of thing. And then we have London, which I head up, and we're building out a European practice at the moment. Stax is known for supporting private equity, the private equity ecosystem around any kind of deal situation. We do a lot of buy-side commercial due diligence, sell-side commercial support on the vendor due diligence aspect, and then we do the value creation piece in between. So we'll support portfolio companies on achieving their growth objectives, whether that's through top-line growth and pricing or geographic growth, how they expand out. A lot of the work we've done, actually, being a US-centric firm, has been helping companies, either European companies, grow into the US, or now we're helping more and more US companies grow into Europe as well. The other aspect of Stax, I guess, is sector aligned. So our primary sector is the tech sector, tech and software. I look after our industrials practice, and we also cover off business services, financial services, healthcare, consumer, but in those sort of sector verticals.
And strategically, why did it make sense for Grant Thornton? I mean, the obvious is, the overlap, right, with clients.
Yep.
So there's cross-selling, but they probably could have chosen among other consulting firms that specialize in private equity. Why do you think that transaction came about?
I mean, it's a broadening of capabilities as well. Grant Thornton don't do the commercial sort of stuff. So it's adding on another service line that they can take to their clients. The deal's slightly complex in that Grant Thornton is a collection of franchised operations around the world by geography. And each one has more or less emphasis on private equity. Each one has more or less emphasis on having a bit of strategic M&A restructuring capability. Mm-hmm. This particular deal, because we're US, was done by Grant Thornton US, owned by New Mountain Capital. So it was a US deal. And for them, we're very much a bolt-on. We're an additional service line. They don't do the commercial stuff. They don't really do M&A. which we don't, but we get involved in that. We understand that pipeline. That's one of our key channels to market through the investment banks. Over here in Europe, we kind of came along with the deal, but we're working very closely with Berthelsman UK, working with them on the pipeline. We're additional to them as well, so they didn't have a commercial strategic capability really. So we're a bolt-on over here, just happens to be under a slightly different ownership model. We're just working that through now as part of the integration.
Mm-hmm. And you have a long history in consulting with some of the major firms. I believe it was it Kearney that you first spent a good amount of time in?
Yeah, that's where I started off. I mean, going right back, I'm an engineer by training. I started off with industry roles. I started off designing ground-to-air missiles, actually, for British Aerospace. Then I went into the automotive industry, working for Michelin, where I was based in France for 5 years, designing machines that make tires. And then I moved into manufacturing around quite a lot of the plants in France. And because of that sort of industrial initial background, that's what stayed with me ever since. I came back to the UK, did an MBA, and I got into consulting post-MBA with Kearney, doing a lot of, at that time, large-scale performance improvement, cost transformation type programs with corporate clients predominantly, doing a lot of operational stuff with big OEMs in automotive and aerospace. That was my background. Doing a lot of strategic work with Spy-based, trying to get into those OEMs. And I actually first made partner at Kearney as an automotive partner. So I ran the automotive practice in the UK. But then the balance of my work shifted much, much more with the growth of private equity in the early 2000s. We got approached by private equity to help them out as they were looking to buy up elements of the supply chain in automotive originally. And so because I'd done quite a bit of strategy work with some of the assets they were looking to buy, and because I had worked with the OEMs who were their eventual customers, it was quite natural to start working with them on those sorts of deals. And gradually the balance of my work just shifted much, much more to transaction-related work, both private equity and corporate mergers, actually. So then I ran Kearney's transactions practice. And then I was the UK managing partner for a couple of years. And I absolutely loved Kearney. Fabulous company. Really, really, really enjoyed it. But I've been there so long, I got to a point where I sort of stopped learning a little bit. So that's when I decided to try something a bit different, just to learn it a little bit more. So that different I chose was to go to Big Four. I headed up EY-Parthenon just after they'd made that acquisition, which was a US acquisition as well, but came with a small London office that I then had to bolt into EY's strategy practice at that time and for EY-Parthenon. So I was there for 4 or 5 years. I enjoyed seeing how Big Four operates from the inside. It wasn't quite for me. I struggled a little bit with the scale, the bureaucracy. It wasn't really a sort of partner-owned business. They were a bit siloed in how they thought about geographies, positions. And there were lots of different parts of the organization all trying to do the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, as I said, I enjoyed it to a certain extent. But then I decided to go back to my roots, in effect. And then for the last 5 years, I've been running Roland Berger in the UK, which is very similar to Kearney, very industrials focused, a good balance of corporate and private equity work. And that's what I was doing until I got a call from Stax. I didn't know Stax, didn't know who they were. I'd never heard of them, but they had the intention of growing in Europe. And it was just an interesting challenge to come on board at a time when it was really a bit of a new entrant into the market and helping the firm grow over here. So I joined Stax last year, and things were going pretty well. We were growing quite nicely in the UK. The new entrant message was kind of going down well because we recognize we are a new entrant to a well-served market with some very strong competitors already. So we kind of had to be a bit more flexible, a bit more responsible, a bit more reasonable in pricing, all that sort of stuff that you do as a new entrant into the market. And those sorts of messages were going down well, certainly with the mid-market private equity clients that we tend to serve most. So we were just building all that up. We were private equity owned ourselves. Stax was and still is, I guess, ultimately by New Mountain Capital. So the sale was always on the cards. It probably came a little bit early for our European business. We're not quite in our steady state yet. But it was very good. It was a great deal for the US business. And we're just working through the integration considerations of all of that right now.
And is it that Stax caters to private equity through the acquisition process? So as they are starting to consider a potential investment, they will bring you in to help So it's almost pre-diligence, like it's in the kind of evaluation of the opportunity, or do you come in after they've decided to make the investment or as they're making the decision?
It depends on the client. It can be in all of those cases. I mean, it is pre-diligence in terms of we work with them sharing thoughts about specific sectors where we think there's going to be opportunities coming up. But then we go right down through the whole diligence process, helping them to figure out if what they're looking at is a good sector, a good asset within that sector, well placed, good customers, good propositions. And I think that the Stax differentiator is a little bit the tech angle, because the US has been the tech market for the last 5 years or however long, and that's spurred a lot of Stax's growth. That sort of tech angle plays quite well over here. I mean, I'm not a tech guy. I'm an old school hardware kind of guy, but I do recognize that every industrial asset has some kind of tech angle to it now. And I'm quite enjoying being surrounded by colleagues who can speak the tech language, who do understand software and how that can work. And I sort of play the end market perspective. Like if I'm looking at an asset that is a tech asset, I can see how that's going to aid an industrial firm, how it's going to be valuable to an industrial end customer.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got plenty of colleagues who talk about exactly what the underpinnings and foundations of that tech company are.
Mm-hmm. And I presume it's you have the landscape drawn out internally. Okay, here are all the, call it mid-market private equity firms in Western Europe. Here are all the sectors that they're looking at. Now let's start, if there's an existing relationship there, let's start kind of engaging more with those relationships. If they're new, let's establish a good relationship with them. And then let's start really adding value to their processes. In terms of the activity of your work, is that what kind of you're doing?
Yes. I mean, I think the first angle, although we're just starting out in Europe, Stax has done quite a bit of work in Europe historically, but it's always been done for US private equity funds looking to buy European assets, typically with a growth story back into North America.
Mm-hmm.
And those sort of early clients have said over the last few years, if you guys had boots on the ground in Europe, we'd love to put more work your way. And so that was kind of the immediate trigger and incentive for setting up a business over here.
Mm-hmm.
And so the easiest path of entry for us is just to go back to those clients who also have a London office and say, Stax for all the stuff we've done in the US, we've now got a capability over here. How can we support you here? So that's one angle, just working with the European-based office of an existing client. And then the second one is, we'll bring our own personal credit. Everybody I've been hiring since I joined the firm has had experience, has had clients in the past with whom they have relationships, experiences. So we've been going to them and sort of saying, we're now part of a tech-driven, private equity-focused business that is trying to grow here. We'd love to work with you, we'd love to build stuff. And so that helps as well. So our sort of differentiators and the cube of credibility I've talked about, the credibility of if we've worked with the US colleagues of a client, if we've got personal experiences with that client, and if that client is looking for something that is either tech or US focused, and that sort of cube of credibility, that's our sweet spot. That's where we've been building.
Okay, got it. Is there an example of a good kind of client engagement? Obviously, you don't have to share anything that's like confidential where you don't want to, reveal names, but is there a good example of kind of an engagement while you were at Stax where you truly helped a private equity client or a company?
Yeah, there's plenty. We're working on a number of live projects now where we're helping them out. Things like, just thinking of one in my space, because I used to work in the tire industry. I've over the years done quite a bit of deals in the tire aftermarket. Now in the tech space, there's some great businesses out there that are helping link up fleet managers, for instance, who are managing a fleet, managing the tires that they have on their fleet. If they have a puncture somewhere around the country, there are some great bits of software now that are many-to-many portals that can link up a fleet manager to a service provider that provides tires from a specific OEM that they have a relationship with, and that sort of three-way matchup of requirements. You get a clever bit of tech in the middle of it, bit of subscription model on that. That's an example of where we can really help out the private equity funds that see the value that particular bit of software can bring by assessing, how it's perceived by the service providers, fleet managers, the OEMs, how they're growing, all that kind of stuff. The role they play in that whole ecosystem, the value that clients see in it.
Okay, now I always like to touch on something that speaks to who you are as a person. And I love the fact that you kind of reveal bits about your personal life. First off, you were a professional rugby player.
Yes.
Before the missiles, you were an athlete. You'd been playing since childhood?
I had, and I was playing at a time when the game was just going professional. So I played in that great period. I had a day job designing missiles, and I was also playing in the English First Division alongside that. And then when I went over to France, I ended up playing with Clermont-Auvergne, which is one of the French top teams, who are sponsored by Michelin. And again, I was doing that in parallel to my Michelin work. And then as the game gradually went professional, it was a shame because it was kind of towards the end of my career. And I had 1 year where it went professional and they offered me a contract just to run around and chase the ball. I thought this would be a bit of fun. It was towards the back end of my career. And to be honest, I was only ever a journeyman, kind of squad member rather than a real star. So it was never a career option. But it was something great that I did in parallel as an amateur. And then when the game went professional, I just had 1 year of great fun running around chasing the ball. It was fantastic.
Frequently, I'll talk to former athletes, competitive athletes, whether it was collegiate or, semi-pro or in fact professional. And there's always something they learn from having been in that kind of team environment. Is there something you've carried over from your athlete days into your professional life?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is that whole teaming kind of environment. You kind of learn how to get on with people, how to motivate people, how to get the best out of everybody around you. Mm-hmm. And rugby's quite, I don't know if it's unique, but there's an element of humble respect to everybody around you. You really appreciate the value that everybody else can bring. And there's a great sense of humor that runs through the sport as well. And so being able to tease people, to crack jokes, to improve people's performance around you, to take a bit of stress out of situations with a bit of humor, all of those sorts of things you learn in a changing room and on the field that I honestly do think you can apply, even without thinking about it, you apply it in your day-to-day work and it just creates for a better environment, I find.
Mm-hmm. Now the animals. So you have horses, sheep, cat, dog, fish. I'm probably leaving stuff out.
Chickens.
So tell us about that. Do you live on a farm?
But we're surrounded by a farm. We've got a bit of land. It's not really a farm. Yeah, we moved out of London when the kids were growing up, needing a bit more space. Boys are a bit like cows. They need an acre each. And so in London, you just don't get that kind of space. So we moved out to the countryside. I've got 2 daughters as they were growing up. They got into the riding things, got horses. It's lovely having a bit of space and having animals around. That was a key driver for moving out of London. And actually, it's been great to see the kids growing up surrounded by animals. That, again, is a great learning experience. In fact, the horse thing, I know nothing about horses. My wife was always into riding. She was brought up with horses. And I've really enjoyed her passing on the sort of horse skills to my daughters, to the extent that my daughters sort of teach me stuff now. I might be outside around the horses, and the girls from a very small age were already, masters of that environment and far more. I think their confidence kind of grew with that because they were telling dad what to do, which again is a great learning experience. So they're now offered, they're now studying at university, so that the animals don't get as much love from them anymore. But we're left with them, and they are a joyous part of living in the countryside.
Last 2 questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
There are lots from my sporting days, lots of coaches and fellow players who I've learned a great deal from. My Kearney days, there were some great senior partners when I was just coming up through the ranks who passed on just bits of how to be a good partner. There were many. There was one partner who I had at Kearney who was an ex-professional ballroom dancer who was on Strictly Come Dancing. He ran a lessons in leadership from dance program at one of the business schools in Europe. And he gave a little performance for all the partners when I was at Kearney. I learned an enormous amount from that as well. So each of these, there's no one person that I would say was my main inspiration, but I've taken little bits and pieces from 10, 15, 20 people out there over the years. I'd love to take them all out for dinner one night. That would be a very interesting evening if I do that one day. But yeah, got something from everyone really. And actually, I tell you who else I've learned from is all the juniors. One of the things that keeps me in this industry, because initially I only planned to stay in it for a couple of years and then go back to industry. But the juniors, they're so bright, they're so intelligent, they're so motivated. When we get them in, being in a team with them is invigorating. And I learned an enormous amount from them. My daughters, I've learned an awful lot about. Gen Z is a weird and mystic place, but it's a wonderful one if you can get to understand it. And so I've learned an awful lot from the juniors about that sort of thing.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
There's one in India. There's a charity called Oscars, which it's sport related. So in Mumbai, it was set up in the sort of slum areas as a way of getting children to go to school and stay in school. There's a guy called Ashok who set it up, who set up football pitches and allowed people to come and play football. Total low cost way of getting people to play sport. You just stick a couple of things on the ground and you've got a goal. And to go to those trainings, they had to show that they had been in school, and it was a way of keeping the kids in school for longer, particularly important for girls. Mm-hmm. They started coming on tour to the UK, playing in schools. And my wife's very supportive of it. My daughters have all been out there and participated in the programs that they run. And so that sort of links up sport with education, with aspiration. I think it's a fabulous charity.
Wonderful. Well, Phil, I want to thank you again for taking the time. It's been a great conversation.
Good pleasure talking to you. Thanks.